Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Amy Rafat, and I am a private sector specialist at IFC's employability program, VTI, and I will be moderating this session today. Today, we have a timely topic for you: how to prepare your students for the new globalization era. The nature of work is changing. Working remotely has become commonplace in many organizations, or at least some form of hybrid model. In parallel, the climate and social crises are increasing in the world. And this means we need the new generation to be prepared for this. The question is, how? And what exactly are private institutions, the private sector, what are the skills and the values that the private sector is looking for? So we decided to dedicate this webinar to this exciting topic. We have a great panel of speakers lined up for you today, representing both sides of the equation, so the education institutions and the private sector from different regions in the world. And I am delighted to introduce our guest speakers. We have Judy Kay, the Vice Chair and an Executive Committee member of the World Association for Work Integrated Education, or WAIS, in addition to being a consultant on graduate employability at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology. We have Aravinda Ram, the Deputy Pro-Vice Chancellor at Botho University, a Pan-African on-campus and distance learning institution based in Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and Eswatini. She oversees the university's employability strategy, supporting both students and alumni. And from representing the private sector, we have Isabel Dingler. She is an innovation and sustainability consultant at Sharkbite Innovation, a consulting firm based in Germany, where she assists businesses to take action toward achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I am sure you will have questions for our speakers, so we will have a Q&A session at the end, and I encourage you to send over your questions in the Q&A box during the session. Now, let's move to our speakers. And I'd like to start with you, Isabel. And let's go straight to the point of what are you looking for as a firm when you are hiring new employees, besides the technical skills, of course?
Thank you, Amy. It's a great question since we also work hybrid. We definitely have 3 skills and traits I would like to mention. So that's creativity, communication skills, and entrepreneurial thinking. And we were just recently in a hiring process of a senior consultant. And obviously in the beginning, we do check if the technical background is there. But in the final interview process, our focus was really on these soft skills and to look if the team fit really is there. And this one candidate really convinced us with his form of interaction with us and with his ideas and entrepreneurial mindset and creative problem-solving approach. So it was definitely the mix and a really great importance to the soft skills we were looking at.
Okay, so the communication, entrepreneurship are 2 high ones. Mm-hmm. And have you seen a change? Would you say the skills you're looking for have changed or increased in some way since the pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, we definitely adapted our form of working, as probably everyone in this webinar can agree. Our mode of operation changed, and I think the importance of communication has increased a lot because in this virtual world, we don't see our colleagues often face to face, and spontaneous meetings don't happen in the coffee corner. So we really need to reach out more And yes, what I personally like to do is have virtual coffee chats or daily 15 minutes check-ins with my colleagues to see what are their current challenges and what is maybe going on besides work. So being proactive and being empathetic to our colleagues and really understanding, having a form of communication besides only the work topics is really important.
Right. Okay. So it's the communication now. The focus is changed a bit. You need to know how to communicate online and still have that kind of team spirit.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good tip, Isabel. So let's move to Aravinda to hear how her university is preparing students for this new marketplace. So Aravinda, could you tell us what initiatives you have at Botho University to prepare students for the global labor market?
Thanks, Amy. I think employability, it's a word that sits right within the strategy at Botho University. We've been working on producing employable graduates from as early as 2007, 2008, when we coined a list of essential traits all our students should have called the Botho graduate profile. And all that we do at the university revolves around this theme. A few examples of things that we do around the BGP are offering student-centered learning in the classroom and having a very practical and project-driven approach to teaching and learning. We get feedback constantly from industry through our industry reference forums, and we use it to constantly define and refine the kind of programs that we want to offer. We have an entrepreneurship module embedded in all our programs. We have mandatory credit-bearing internships embedded in all our programs. We offer employability skills training to all our students right from the moment they join us. So we have continuous conversations with them on this topic. And of course, we offer opportunities for voluntary internships such as WASTE to our students, which allow them to work in multicultural teams with international employers. So we build a very globally aware kind of student. We have a very clear strategy to differentiate based on employability. And I think over the past 25 years, we want to make it our USP in the regions we operate. So that's been our biggest strength in ensuring that all the employability interventions that we plan actually get executed so that we can reap these intended benefits in real time.
Sorry, I was muted. So I was going to say thank you for sharing that, Aravinda, and all these initiatives that you have. I wanted to pick up on the graduate profile one. You spoke about like these competencies that you create. Do you also focus on values in addition to competencies?
Yeah, we are unwaveringly an ethical and value-driven institution. So that's the kind of things that we also inculcate and want to instill in our students and graduates. Actually, the term Botho in our name as Botho University is also a very powerful, reverent cultural concept, which is upheld even amongst the national principles of Botswana. It almost mandates that we strive to produce students who are individuals rooted in this concept. It essentially means a well-mannered, humble, disciplined, and courteous individual who earns respect by first giving it to others in the community. So the Botho graduate profile is divided into 3 sections. The first is career traits, which is what employers would be looking at, such as being articulate, being knowledgeable, being innovative, and entrepreneurial, like Isabel mentioned, to personality traits, such as being ethical, collaborative, and a critical thinker. But of course, also we have a category on social traits, which is where I think the values comes to fore, being a socially responsible individual. So how can they take their education and make an impact to see opportunity and overcome challenges in their communities, and being environmentally aware, which is why the internships with WASTE, which are aligned with the SDGs, also make a lot of sense for us to offer our students as they help instill some of these values. So yes, we do focus on values.
That is so inspiring to hear, Aravinda, this concept of Botho. And I think that's exactly what we need in this time of environmental crisis and political polarization. Thank you for sharing that. What I'd like to say is now is Aravinda, what Aravinda and Isabel have in common is working with waste to achieve this goal of creating the right skill set and value set for the modern world. So I'd like to come to you, Judy, and ask you to tell us what waste is, or what this program is, and what the aims are, just briefly for our audience.
Sure, Amy, and thank you very much for the invitation. It's wonderful to be here. WACE is the global organisation bringing together institutions and national associations around the really powerful concept of experiential or work integrated learning or education. And we believe that really empowers students with the skills they need when they graduate and go into the workforce, with both the discipline skills but also the soft skills that Isabel's talked about. And a couple of years ago, we started a thing called the Global Challenge, and that is a month-long student teams working on projects aligned to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. We've had over 31 institutions involved to date and 400 students, and they work in transnational multidisciplinary teams on projects related to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so it's been highly successful in developing students' employability skills, with over 80% of the students reporting an increase in both their employability skills and also their networking skills. And it's all, we operate off a platform with a company called Practera that works students through this month-long experience.
Okay, that sounds like a great program. And I just wanted to pick up on this last point. I was going to say, how do you find employers? Is that Practera?
Yes, Practera or anyone, but Practera are mainly responsible for, we have employers across all industries that have participated in countries right across the world, from large manufacturers through to small startups, not-for-profits, NGOs, government agencies, all sorts of agencies that put forward a project that they, like I think Sharkbait, you know, where they haven't had the time to do it, and they'd like a team of students to work on that project for them.
Okay, so that's how you found Isabel, through this education technology company. Great, good to know, because our audience will want to know. Which disciplines would you say this works best for, since the internship is fully remote and some disciplines would require physical contact?
Yes, well, we really focus on those soft skills. The sort of learning outcomes are around problem identification, communication, learning to relate to different cultures. So we've actually had students from every discipline you can imagine, from dentistry through to business, science. We're constantly surprised by the range of disciplines of students that come into the program and find it really beneficial. And so that's worked really well. And I guess what happens within the teams is that the students are encouraged to utilise the skills of the students coming into their team. So if they're mathematical students or science students, they may do more of the analysis. If they've got communication or business students, they may do more of the writing of the report. So they utilise the skill sets of the different members of their team, which is very similar to our workplaces. That's how we operate in a workplace. So for students, this is an experience of working as you would in a workplace, utilising the skills of your team members.
Exactly. Okay, this is amazing. So yeah, it reflects the real work experience, and also you need those cross-cutting skills in any discipline. So that's great to hear. Okay, so let's hear about one of these projects. So I'll come back to you, Isabel. Could you tell us what project you provided the WACE students with to work with you as a company?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sure. As Judy said, it was a real topic and a real challenge for us that we just didn't have the capacity to do so ourselves. And our challenge was to revise our marketing and branding strategy, and to find out what is our image to the outside, how do our competitors communicate, and what channels we can use best to present Sharkbite online. And the outcome was a detailed student report and some of our blind spots. So we learned about how we could make better use of our website and on LinkedIn. For example, we got some new inspiration and ideas from the team to use the LinkedIn, the event function in LinkedIn, and to have some more detailed content and interact with our network there. So it was definitely helpful to have the student team working on this project.
Yeah, this sounds like really helpful for a business, and especially a consulting firm, that they helped you with your marketing and branding. And what kind of resources did this entail from your end? What was it, you, and how much of your time? Because we know that's a restriction to some extent for companies to participate in these things.
Mm-hmm. So from our end, I was responsible for the project and I was the point of contact for the students. And I had 2 meetings with the team during this monthly project. And I also reviewed a draft report and then the final report for the team and gave detailed feedback on each section via the Practera online platform. But on the other hand, the team worked really independently, self-organized, and it just required a few touch points, but it was mainly these administrative and feedback tasks. Yeah.
Okay, and why did you decide as Sharkbite to participate in this WACE program? Like, what was your initial incentive to go for this?
Mm-hmm. So first, as I also already said, we have limited capacity and any extra help from the outside is very, very welcome. And the topic that always falls behind for us is marketing. So that was a great opportunity for this. And second, we wanted to get a new perspective on our branding and marketing. We as a company want to contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals, but these are global goals. And I think it's important that we not only have our view as a German company and with working with German clients, but also have a multinational team of students look at this and give us a new perspective. And yes, ultimately, it was just a personal motivation for me because as a student, I also participated in a lot of similar projects with interdisciplinary teams. And this was a really valuable experience for me. And I wanted to give it back a little bit and promote quality education there. And I think, this was a great opportunity for us as Sharkbite to contribute there.
Okay, that's great. That's really great for us working on the education side to see that you as companies are seeing the benefits of diversity and different perspectives and wanting to give back. That's great. Thank you. I'd like to talk about how the students are actually evaluated on internships, as this is something we see again and again as a struggle for many of our educators. How do you evaluate a student that's doing something not under your own eyes? What do you do exactly? So I'll go to you, Judy, and if you could tell us how you evaluate students on WACE.
Well, thanks, Amy. So essentially the students come onto the Practera platform and they start by reviewing their skills based on the World Economic Forum 21st Century Skills and identify where they are against the sort of generic skills that Isabel's talked about that are globally accepted as the sort of skills that, the communication, problem solving, etc. They identify some skills that they want to work on. And then at the end, they review again those skills. So they make an assessment of their own skill development against those particular employability skills. Also during the month-long team effort, they also get reviewed by their peers in the team. So the students review each other, give them each other some feedback. And this is really powerful because, and they're guided to do that. So that they're giving, really very constructive feedback to their team members, and students are getting really great feedback from team members. They also then present at the end of the experience to their fellow other team members, to institutional staff that come along. And so they then present and reflect on their skill development and the process that they've undertaken during the month-long project that they've undertaken. As well, as Isabel mentioned, they get 2 pieces of feedback as a team from a real client. So they get to measure themselves in a real industry, a quasi-real experience, because a real client is evaluating what their team has produced in terms of the project outcomes. So they get very valuable feedback, and the students really, really appreciate that feedback.
I'm sure, and I really like the way it's set up, that they get peer review, because again, you're mirroring the work environment. This is what will happen in the work environment. You get feedback from your peers. That's great. And what about managing and supervising this type of work for academic credit? Like, what have you seen overall?
Well, Global Challenge can be done either co-curricular or extracurricular or within the curriculum. And obviously we provide it in either format. It's really up to each university as to whether they can incorporate it into the existing curriculum and whether it will fit within the assessment regime or of that particular curriculum, whatever it is. And we have done both. So we've done, mainly to this point, it's been outside the curriculum, but a number of institutions have been able to bring it into the curriculum, and a number of others are considering that. It takes a little while to work through that and talk to the academics, etc. So both are possible. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I'll ask Aravinda at this point. Are the WACE internships a credit-bearing module at both university, and could you talk us through your rationale?
Currently, WACE is not credit-bearing. It's not part of the offerings that we give our students for their credit-bearing module because of the duration, because WACE is around 4 weeks, whereas we mandate our internships to be around 5 months, around 17 to 18 weeks is what we expect students. So currently it's not a credit-based module, but I must say that, the mindset of students towards taking on these kind of opportunities has also shifted. So while it is not mandatory, currently we're seeing a lot of interest in the module for students to sign up. And I have to say, a few years ago, if we had offered students these kind of opportunities, perhaps we may not have seen this kind of interest. But with all the work that has been done around building awareness with students, and we've also seen the pandemic accelerating acceptance of virtual opportunities, I think WACE has suddenly become that much more accessible and acceptable for our students and graduates to participate, despite it not being mandatory.
Right, so it sounds like you're getting quite an uptake on something that's not mandatory. And I wanted to ask here, like, was this part of your reasoning for not making it mandatory?
So currently there is a slight cost that is associated with WACE as well. And we as an institution, we do value these kind of opportunities for our students. So we've taken on the responsibility of subsidizing these costs for our students. So initially we put 5 students onto the program. Thankfully, due to WACE, we managed to get them onto the program and they did really well. And so we quickly signed up to the partnership as an institutional member. All of this happened last year around October 2021 when we became a full institutional member. And then from there, we decided to take on the path of saying, let students also take on a little bit of the cost. I think it helps to have that kind of commitment to make this kind of an investment. And we were not sure how the response would be. But surprisingly, a lot of students said, sure, we'll go ahead. We actually had to stop the applications and we managed to go ahead with students who are now part funding. a nominal amount for participation in WACE. And they also did really well and gave great feedback. So we are now working on our next cohort for June 2022 with WACE.
I love that philosophy, like get them to commit even if it's a small percentage. But at this point, again, for the benefit of everybody online, could I ask you, Judy, what the cost of joining this program is from an institution from one of our regions that we focus on, i.e. a developing region? It could be Africa or Middle East.
So WACE is committed to making this as accessible as we possibly can. And that's one of the reasons why we've established the Global Challenge virtually. So it's either $100 for a member institution per student, or $200 per student if you're not a member of WACE. So for a month-long program, it's actually not a lot of money, although I understand that resources are difficult. But it takes a lot of effort to put this on, so it has to attract a fee, but we make it as low as we possibly can.
Yes, I can imagine the amount of effort that goes into putting something like this together. So that sounds like a very reasonable fee, but I'd like to ask Aravinda here, are students then able to afford these internships? What are you seeing?
We are seeing more and more students willing to pay for opportunities like WACE, which are not mandatory part of their curriculum. So as an institution, like I said, we're subsidizing some of the costs initially, but we are also very clear, this is not intended for everybody. It's not like a mass offering. So what we want to do at both the university is we want to curate a bouquet of employability opportunities for our students from which they can select. So we'll build the awareness, we'll give them the information, we'll emphasize the importance of it, and we'll offer them all these opportunities, but then students have to make that decision of which one they want to choose. So we thank organizations like WACE because they're partnering with us, and also the virtual world, because then these opportunities actually become possible for us to offer our students. So yeah, currently it's not a mass offering, and those who are really interested sign up for it, but we are seeing that students are keen to take on these kind of opportunities.
Yeah, that's great. Give them the ownership. Yeah. I wanted to move to the point on accrediting internships, the accreditation of internships. If it's not this one, I understand that you offer others and they are accredited in your university. So first, because this is again something that in the maybe the first world or the developed world, that is kind of the norm, but in many developing regions, that's not always the case, that they're accredited. So first of all, is that part of the regulatory requirements in the countries you operate to have an internship where you operate?
Currently, it is not. So internships are not a mandatory part of the curriculum that is offered in the regions we operate in. So that's a no to that first part of the question.
Okay, but, so you've gone forward with it alone. And what, since it's not, what are the challenges you faced when accrediting these internships at your institution?
Overall, regulators, they see value in things like internship and offering students these kind of opportunities. But typically, internships are done only as an optional module or not as closely monitored and assessed. So there were quite a few challenges when we made internships mandatory. This was way back around 2012, 2013. Firstly, it increased the duration of our program. So it's a 6-month internship, which is part of the program. So our programs became 4.5 years, 5.5 years, and we had a lot of explanation to regulators and sponsors as to what this half year is all about. But we were very clear that this is important. There are clear learning outcomes associated with it. There is close monitoring and evaluation, and there is, it must be considered as an essential part of all our programs and accredited as such. So that was the first challenge. The second challenge was also that we had to try to find employers who could offer relevant internships to our students in line with their program of study. So if you're offering a jewelry management and design program, now you have to find an employer in that discipline, or at least somebody who can offer a project that helps the students apply the concepts they are learning. So we had to do a lot of awareness building with employers. We had to establish a lot of partnerships with employers, which in the long run is anyways beneficial. And it's been 10 years now that we have still managed to run these internships as mandatory parts of our program.
That's impressive. And I was going to say, when you said we're struggling with the employers, I bet you did. We hear this all the time, you know, finding the Isabels in the world and trying to bring them on board. So we heard how WACE evaluates these internships from Judy. Could you tell us how you as a university then evaluate your students that have taken an internship, whether it's WACE or otherwise, especially when you're managing for academic credit? Aravinda, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes, sorry. Okay, so okay, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry if I
Shall I
didn't
repeat
hear
that
that last.
question?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was saying we've heard from Judy about WACE evaluation, and I'd like to hear about how you, as both a university, evaluate students that go through an internship. What's your process, especially if you're managing this for academic credit?
So our learning outcomes for this internship have to be very clearly defined, because this is credit bearing. So one of the key things that we measure is whether students are able to apply the concepts that they've learned in class to these real world problems and projects that they are engaged with. The internship thus has to be relevant to their program of study in some way. And also if they're able to pick up some new skills on the job. So if you have a software developer student, you may not be able to teach them all the programming languages that are out there, but whether they can take the fundamentals and then go work in a software development project and learn on the go with minimal supervision, take some initiative, have that discipline to complete projects on time, be able to express any challenges in a professional and respectful manner. Also, how to handle emergencies and unexpected situations. All of these are things that we are looking for when we are assessing internships. The interns also have to submit a weekly log of the work that they have done and their reflections on the same, which we think is very important for them to realize what are the gaps where they can improve. And there's also an internship tutor who's assigned to every student who goes on internship. And they are required to have at least one meeting, either physical or virtual, with the employer to understand the progress of the student. So it is quite a resource intensive process, but we've seen that students come out of this experience transformed. And the good thing is, because our internships are around the third year and students still have a year left in university, they can actually go out, experience the real world, understand where the gaps are, where they need to improve, come back into university and work on them. So by the time they graduate, I think they come out more industry ready, if I may say so.
I'm sure they do. Okay, so and it sounds quite similar to what Judy was saying. You both have a similar process, this self-reflection, give the students their ownership, and also some external kind of reflection. Thank you for sharing that. Judy, I wanted to ask you, what kind of challenges do you see with regards to the students? Meaning, are they, do they struggle with anything, and how do you deal with that if they're unable to perform?
Well, some of the challenges that we've faced, we haven't faced many, which has been a bit of a surprise actually, but some of the challenges we face are actually the benefits of the program. So some of it's around the diversity of the teams, some of it's around managing the time zones that students have to deal with, and learning how to do that. Self-regulating their own, as Isabel said, they're quite independent in their working through these projects, although they're monitored through the Practera platform, so we can see if people are struggling. So there's been a few of those sorts of challenges, but I think overall we've been very surprised at the lack of challenges that the students have faced, and they also grow through any of the challenges that they experience, and we ensure that they sure they reflect on that in their reflection session. But I should also say that we do a workshop around cultural intelligence before the students start. So if there's any issues around communicating across cultures, across time zones, then we support the students to identify those and give them some skills at dealing with it. So, you know, some of these challenges we flip over and turn them into benefits of the program, really.
That sounds great. I mean, especially the cultural intelligence, because this is, yeah, diversity working across the globe is an important. And I also sympathize to some extent with the ones that struggle with time zone. I have to work in different time zones, but yeah, you have to get used to it.
I should say, Amy, also, we obviously have diverse student groups. So some of the students have never had any work experience at all. And so there's a whole lot of skill development that they can, on the platform, that they can actually, on the Praetura platform. So, you know, we support those students. So there's a diversity of students, postgraduate, undergraduate, different disciplines. So it's really a very multi-factored environment, but the students benefit with some support.
I'm sure. And could you just tell us briefly, what are you hearing from the students about this?
Well, to refresh myself, I had a look at the feedback today, and it really is wonderful to read the feedback because it's overwhelmingly positive. It's, you know, between 80 to 90% positive comments from students. And a lot of them talk about what this topic's about, developing a global mindset, developing skills to work in a global world. They talk about the you know, great that they can work on real projects. For some students, they've never worked with a real client before. A lot of them talk about the teamwork and the collaboration skills. One student talked about the fact that he didn't realise he had leadership skills until he became the project lead. And that was a law student from India. So that was, you know, a joy to read that. And the other things I just say is they just loved interacting. Awesome. Wonderful to meet all these other people. And there's a few comments about how intense and challenging, but ultimately how rewarding the whole experience was. So they're really positive and wonderful comments coming from a very diverse group of students scattered across every continent, basically.
That's very inspiring to hear, Judy. I mean, it sounds like a good future here. You gave young people the opportunity, they run with it. I wanted to move back to this topic of securing employers. So I'll go to you, Aravinda. So WACE, Judy's told us how WACE secures their employers. But for your other internships, you said you find that difficult. And I fully understand that. This is what we constantly hear from our audience and our clients, the difficulty of engaging employers. So how do you do that? How do you incentivize them to work with you, the Isabels of the world?
Employers have always lamented the lack of employable graduates. I mean, it is a real problem. We appreciate that. And the only difference we see is that as educational institutions or universities, we're made out to be solely responsible, but we see this as a collaborative effort. So in our engagement with the employers through our industry reference forums, we request them to join forces with us to solve this employability crisis, as they so call it, or is termed. So from providing feedback on the kind of programs and the content that the industry requires to opening their doors for internships to our students, they also become part of the solution. And I think that in itself should be an incentive. After having invested into a student, it almost makes sense for the employers to potentially recruit them, as they were in a sense almost customized for their requirements. Again, in order to take this a little bit further, because employability is dear to us as an institution, so we're willing to make and put in some extra resources to make this happen. So we're also willing to take on a little bit of the administrative workload associated with these kind of internships and opportunities by allocating people and costs that are required by managing such a process, so that the employer can focus on providing that work experience, the relevant work experience that is so required for the students. So we also do a lot of awareness building around our programs. So whenever we launch a new program, we do tend to go out into the market to talk about what that program is about, so that employers know that there's students from this kind of a program that are going to be available and what opportunities exist. Back in the day, we used to send out letters, etc. We used to have a lot of meetings. Now it's all done virtually. But yeah, we have to do this repeatedly and continuously to build awareness. And I think all parties need to see that it is beneficial for everybody to be involved in solving this problem, and there's incentives for everybody.
Right, that's a great tip. I really like the one on taking on the administrative work, because that is a real restriction for employers' time. So if you take that, or you're really partnering with them, you're like, come work with us and we'll help you. Thank you for that tip, Aravinda. So we've heard from Aravinda and Judy on how to engage with employers. I'd like to get some advice from an employer herself. Isabel, could you give us some advice on how education institutions that want to engage with employers for internships like yourself, what's the best way to engage you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely add on these points of Judy and Aravinda and really confirm this. For the first point, I would like to say, make it easy for employers. As Aravinda said, taking on the administrative effort is super helpful, because then companies might, or as an employer, I might be more open, committed to starting a cooperation. Also think about what types of projects are useful. I think research projects work really well, because it doesn't require too much interaction between employer and student team and administration. And yes, also look for common ground if you approach new clients. If you don't have the contacts via Practera or anyone else to connect you with somebody, which would be the optimal case if you have a warm introduction. But if you don't have that, try to look for common ground. If other companies, for example, try to impact the SDGs, like we did, then this might be easier to get your foot in the door. And yes, just some practical tips from my side. I would always look LinkedIn first, because then you can definitely find the right person and know what's their position and responsibility there, and really get in direct contact. Yes, so in general, just build on existing partnerships and connections. And as also said by Aravinda, really emphasize the why and the benefits for them taking part, or for us as employers for taking part in such programs.
That's great. Thank you so much, Isabel. Okay, and I really picked up on the going to one person as opposed to sending out a cold email, maybe finding somebody on LinkedIn that in a company that looks like they're interested in this. Thank you for that tip. One other question I had for you, are you as SharkBite doing anything else with education institutions? Like what are you doing in that space as a company?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as we discussed, or I told you beforehand, that we have an exciting other project we do with the German University of Neu-Ulm and the University of Rwanda. They are designing a new master's program for circular economy in agriculture and applied entrepreneurship. And it is a project funded by the ministry, or it is supported by the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. And we, as a partner from the industry, contribute with some experience in entrepreneurship, and we act as a sparring partner to design the curriculum. So we gave feedback there as well.
Wow, okay. So you're helping a university, actually, you're giving them feedback on this new program. That's amazing. And again, inspiring to hear a company in the private sector interested in contributing in such a way to the education of the new generation, and making sure that they have these skills and values necessary to work on these problems. I can see we have just 15 minutes left, so I'd like to switch to the Q&A. Let me go to our first question. Okay, we have a question on the experience of, this is, okay, so Judy's answered part of it. What's the experience of students when participating in WACE? I think we've heard from Judy, but then there's also, could we hear from both of university on their experience, on the students, what the students said to you? Would you quickly like to address that, Aravinda?
I think students have found the whole process very, very engaging and very enriching. They obviously went into it without having an idea of what this was all about. But the feedback that we have gathered internally from all the students who participated has been very positive. They find the experience of working with international employers. I think they find that a bit scary at first, but during the course of the program and by the end of it, they found a lot of confidence in themselves. I think appreciation of working across multicultural teams is a very valuable concept they pick up. Understanding of time zones, while is obvious, is not always common. So our students always quote that to say that we've had to work at very odd hours, but that's the nature of the world of work. And if you've got to work and submit a deliverable, then you've got to find ways to do it. And of course, articulating and communicating very clearly the whole concept of working remotely, which is so essential right now, I think is one of the most important takeaways from this entire experience. So students need to know how to work remotely, how to send that email, how to sort out their challenges using virtual mediums, connecting to meetings. Some of these things were not so commonplace, but now are expected of everybody. So I think our students really find this whole experience very valuable.
Thanks, Aravinda. And then we have a question I think I will direct at Judy this time. Can values be taught? What that might be a big topic, but what do you think, Judy?
Well, I think it is a very big topic, and I saw that flash up and I thought, oh dear. But what had occurred to me was through our cultural intelligence workshop, we talk about the different values of that exist in different cultures. And so we encourage the students to reflect on what their own values are. So I'm not sure that we can teach values, but we certainly can increase students' understanding of the values that they have inherently and also recognise that not everyone holds the same values, and that that when we deal in a multicultural, cross-cultural teams, we need to understand that people have different values and respect those values. So I think it's more around increasing people's understanding of the values and you know, and getting them to identify their own value sets. Really, that would be my thought.
That makes a lot of sense to me. Exactly. Sometimes you don't realize you have a value until you interact, or and maybe if you can't learn a value, at least you can learn to appreciate and respect others. I also then, because you spoke about this botho concept, Aravinda, would you also like to add to that, given that this is a big part of the profile of the students you want to graduate?
I think the values concept is a large concept, and I think there are many contributors to defining an individual's values, right from your parents, your family, to your experiences in life in general contribute to your value system. And I think awareness of an individual who's value driven, the importance of being an ethical and a value driven individual have to be stated explicitly to at educational institutions like we do to our students. It's very important to us. And I think from there, again, the individual has to find some time to reflect on what are their own values. Everybody has a certain set that they commit to as individuals and try to reinforce them through their life experiences. So it's important to be a value-driven individual, and I think that's the concept that we can emphasize. Whether they can be taught or whether you're born with a certain set of values is a bigger debate, but I think definitely you can reinforce a certain set of values, and you can have exposure to different kind of value systems when you engage with individuals from across cultures on international platforms, and then form your own set of values that work best for you. So I think that's an individual process, but we can definitely help as educational institutions in building awareness around the value concept.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. It's a big topic. I suppose maybe I'll take this one and create a whole webinar around it because it's such a big topic. Let me go to the next question. Okay. How to better, maybe I'll go to Judy for this one, to better structure employer partnerships at scale. What are the KPIs that you use when partnering with an employer?
Well, that's a big question. Because and it's a really relevant question because, as Aravinda said, trying to get enough industry partnering with institutions. So I'm going to sort of verge off global challenge. So really, well, in a sense, having students working on projects does help to scale up. So because you can have teams of 6 students working with one employer. So it helps you to scale up how you engage with, how you can utilise your industry partnerships to give larger numbers of students an experience. And the KPIs that you need to use around engaging with great companies like SharkBite are things like whether the mutual fit between what you're trying to achieve, the ability of that organisation to have some time to actually manage the students or the projects or the internships, and establish the communication required to support the university, obviously with the university with a lot of help. So those are the sort of KPIs, I guess. You know, and then there's a whole lot of health and safety and all sorts of things for students that are actually physically there. They're the sort of things that immediately come to mind. But scaling up, particularly in Australia where I'm from, you know, we've got universities that have 50% of their students, 60,000 students, all doing some kind of work integrated learning. So scaling up these experiences is a really critical thing. And so a whole lot of innovations going on around how you do that through hackathons, through competitions, through project-based challenges, through you know, a lot of examples of innovation beyond the one-to-one, the student in a workplace, which is a fabulous experience, but not always possible when you're dealing with 20, 30,000 students. You need to innovate beyond that.
Exactly. Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure that's a challenge our audience is struggling with. I have a question here for Isabel. What do you see as challenges as an institute, as a company, challenges for hiring from different parts of the world, since you're located in Germany? What challenges do you see there, the difficulties in trying to hire from other parts of the world?
Mm-hmm. So currently we have only hired in Germany. And I'm not sure when we are able to really expand our horizon there. But yeah, the challenges now are that we are working with clients that are based in Germany that require German speaking, that limits us a little bit to engage in international cooperation. And so these projects were to really help us internally as a team. But to really have international students or employees would require us to have also English-speaking clients only. Yes.
Right. Okay. So maybe it's something you're going to consider as you expand into English. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that. Let me go. I don't know if the questions go. There they are. Okay. So somebody wants to know where Botho is located to get a sense of where your students are participating from and any local challenges associated with these opportunities. So Aravinda, over to you.
Yeah, Botha University by itself is located in Lesotho, Botswana, Namibia, and Eswatini, and we also have a blended and distance learning campus. But for the waste challenge, we opened it up to our students in Lesotho and Botswana. Majority of them actually joined in from the Lesotho campus. So yeah, that would be the geographical spread of the participation. And in terms of local challenges associated with these opportunities, well, in general, with any virtual opportunity, I think we have to remember that in these parts of the world, internet is still quite a luxury. So we operate in, and students typically utilize mobile data bundles or campus Wi-Fi for their learning. So definitely that in itself limits the participation of students who can take up these kind of opportunities. But students are now willing to make that investment into getting themselves a data bundle for the sake of participation and gaining this kind of international exposure. So from there, then they are leveraging the networks that they form for even more opportunities. And working remotely is also slowly gaining acceptance and being at par with going to work physically. That's also a very big idea here, that you need to get up in the morning and go to work, and that a virtual experience may not be at par. So this is also helping in part to dispel that as not being completely true. There's value in both kind of experiences. So what students should aim for is a combination. And I think the biggest attraction, like I said, is obviously always the chance to work with an Isabel from a SharkBite, an international employer, from the comfort of their home. Something like this was not really possible for our students even a couple of years ago on this kind of a scale. So those are some of the challenges and the ways in which students are now taking up these opportunities.
Right. And I think that's what Judy was talking about. The whole idea behind WACE is this online remote working kind of team to make it much more accessible to people that can't travel. That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Aravinda. There is a Dr. Mohammed Aziz who would like to share his experience. So the current way we have this set up, Dr. Mohammed, is wouldn't allow that except through the chat. So if you could share a few words on the chat, and then I could even speak them out loud. While you do that, I'll move to the next question. Okay, so there's a question about, do you have issues of large class size affecting employability? So I'll ask you, Judy, maybe you could tell us about this but the size of the internship, the groups, and how you prepare them, and does that affect employability?
Well, I think in general that goes back to the previous question one or two ago about the scale required to give students the sort of skills. And so in my roles, in senior roles in Australian universities, that's definitely been an issue, to try to give students those experiences when you're dealing with so many students. And that's why the sort of variety of experiences that Aravinda outlined is the way to go. But for the global challenge, that's not an issue because the students are grouped into teams of 6. So the last global challenge was Global Challenge 3. We had 21 teams. I think we had over 100 students. We're about to do Global Challenge 4, and that will have over 100 as well. And then we've got already nearly 150 students lined up for November. So those are broken down into teams of 5 to 6. So the size doesn't matter. We just get more employers. Sounds easy, but it's not that easy. But we have employers very satisfied. Over 70% of the employers come back and say that their experience, just like Isabel's outlined, that what the students have created has been of positive benefit to their organisation, and they're about to implement the things. So we have organisations that come back to Global Challenge time after time again with different projects. So we just need to get more projects for more teams. That's what happens. But in general, universities that have got large numbers, it becomes an issue on how you manage to build those employability skills at scale. It's the number one.
Okay, so Karen, I think so that the response there is you need more employers, more Isabels. You're going to have to go out and recruit them for your programs. And Aravinda, did you want to give any like a final tip on that as a university, how you deal with this, the numbers in your classes?
So obviously we have a minimum teacher-student ratio as an educational institution that we have to adhere to, and that obviously is not negotiable, and we have to adhere to that. But in terms of opportunities like internships, as I had previously alluded to, it is quite a resource-intensive process, and in order to get the max value out of it, you have to invest in it. So if every student that goes on a mandatory internship, in our case, has an internship tutor associated with it. Now, one internship tutor may have several students associated, but it obviously cannot be an unreasonable number, because then the monitoring, the quality of monitoring will not be as effective. So you've got to find that fine balance. And over the years, we have realized what works for us, depending on the number of students that go out on internships. We've also not differentiated between a physical and a virtual internship, especially for the virtual internships where we offer them as credit bearing. So similar resources have been dedicated, and while the monitoring and evaluation may have switched to virtual mediums, the people that are associated have not been reduced, because again, it's a credit bearing module, so students will still need to be evaluated. So I think every institution has to find out what is the regulatory requirement, what is their own possibility, and how much can they commit before they take on this whole aspect of internships, whether physical or virtual. And it's no longer a nice to have, it's an essential component in our opinion for universities to invest in order to provide that quality learning educational experience. So institutions really need to reflect and say that, yeah, this is something they need to invest in.
Thank you, Aravinda. And with that, unfortunately, we've come to the end of our webinar. So I'm going to have to wrap up now. Before I do, I just wanted to say Judy has shared information here for those who are interested. WACE is holding an information session for universities that are interested in this program. And the link is there on the chat. So please feel free to sign up for that. So today we've learned some good points about what are the top skills, what are employers looking for, and how to equip your students with these skills using internships. So I'm going to say thank you to our speakers, Judy, Aravinda, and Isabel, so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and experience. Thank you to everyone who joined. Thank you for your interesting questions and engagement. That made it really fun. And I hope you're inspired to do more in this space, given what we've just shared. And if you have any questions about IFC Vitae program and how we could help your institution on employability programs, please don't hesitate to contact us. Looking forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you everyone very much. Bye for now. Oh, we've got a clap, thanks. Bye. Bye everyone.